Hello, thanks for joining me. This is going to be a short guide on creating a repo on GitHub, cloning that repo, and building a very basic Express node server application in order to deploy it on Heroku. I recently did a guide where I didn't start on GitHub, and so we had the default branch of master, but recently GitHub changed so that way if you create a new repo on GitHub, instead of using master for the name of that branch, it's main. So I just wanted to show what it looks like to deploy to Heroku using that workflow. Really, the only difference here from the previous video is instead of master, I'm using the word main. Otherwise, no change needed. It works exactly the same. So I'm going to move kind of quickly. So here we go. I'm going to start off by opening up my web browser and going to GitHub to create a new repo for a Node app. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a name of YouTube Heroku deploy. And then I'm going to make that a public repo. I'm going to go ahead and click on add readme and add git ignore. And I'm going to choose a basic git ignore template for a Node app. All right, I'm going to go ahead and create a repo now. Just wait for GitHub to finish that process, and now I'm ready to clone this repo. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to open a bash terminal. I am using git bash for Windows, and I'm going to go ahead and go to where I keep all my code files that on GitHub for my personal GitHub account, and run git clone. And you know what? That might be kind of hard to see all that font. So let's go ahead and make the font size a scotch bigger. Let's go to 20. Yeah, 20 is good. So we're going to git clone, and then I'm going to paste in that git URL. And now I'm ready to change into that directory. And there we go. So let's go to get things started off. I'm going to open this all up in VS Code. And so the next steps are to build a very basic Express server app. It's just going to serve up an H1 tag with a header on the root path, and that's all it's going to do. Just want to focus on how to deploy on Heroku with this workflow. So let's go ahead and open up another terminal, and I'm going to go ahead and touch server.js. By creating server.js first, it yields an advantage because the next thing I need to do is create a package JSON. And if I have server.js there, then npm is going to go ahead and include a start script for me by default, so I don't have to manually create one. So I'm going to run npm init-y to take just the default options using npm. And I just want to make sure in order to deploy on Heroku, I need to make sure I have a start script to launch the server app node server.js. So now we're going to go to server and create a basic Express app. Before I do that, I better go install Express. So I'm going to run npm I Express, and that's going to download and install the Express npm package. And now I can go back to my server.js file. Going to import Express, create a new app object by calling the Express function, and then I need to create my route for root, which is just going to serve an H1 element that says hello world, and then I need to call the listen method on app so that way my server starts accepting requests. All right, great. I have some basic code now. I need to, it imports Express package. I also have a variable here to hold on to a port number. I then create my Express app object, create a route at the root path, which is just going to reply with an h1 tag that says hello world, and then I'm start listening for requests. And just for convenience, when I'm developing, I log this message so that way I can easily look in the terminal and see what port Express is listening on. One other thing we need to do here is, this is fine for development, but this won't work when I deploy on a platform like Heroku, because Heroku needs to assign a port to my app dynamically. So what I'm going to do is add process, which is a global value in node. It's an object with a number of properties. On that process object, we have an env property, and that's basically a hash map. It's an object with a bunch of environmental variables. So I can get port, which is going to be assigned by Heroku when it launches my app. So that can dynamically get the port number from Heroku. If port is undefined, then it falls back to using port 3000, which is what will happen when I test locally. So now that I have server.js working or written, I'm going to quickly test it locally to make sure everything looks okay. I'm going to then make a commit, and then we're going to set up our Heroku app. So let's go ahead and run this with npm start. Now I'm using npm start because that's how Heroku is going to launch the app. So I want to make sure that I launch it I want to make this as similar to what's going to happen in Heroku as possible. There we go. I get my message saying app listening on port 3000. Looking good so far. I'm going to go ahead and open a new tab and go to localhost 3000, and there we go. We can see hello world. So I know the app's working. I'm going to go back to my terminal and hit Control C. That's going to kill the process. And now I'm going to make a commit. So we're going to git add, and first I'm just going to add, I'll just add it all. And git commit, and I'll just say initial route or initial route responds with hello world. And there we go. We can go ahead and get push to put that up on GitHub. Great, I am ready to deploy. I've got one route. It serves up some content. I know it works. I am ready to deploy, and then if this were a bigger project, I could go back and start adding in features, start closing off issues now that I know that my app is deployed and works. So how do we deploy to Heroku? Well, first you need to make sure you have created an account with Heroku and installed the Heroku CLI, which is the Heroku tool belt, and that gives you a bunch of command line scripts you can run to handle all sorts of tasks when it comes to managing your deployed and maintaining your deployed applications on Heroku. So in order to create a brand new app on Heroku, I need to make sure I'm in my repo, and then I can run Heroku Create. If I just run Heroku Create, that's going to let Heroku just assign some random URL and name for my app. I can attempt to assign my own name, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I like to make my names match my GitHub repo names. It just makes it easier to know what's related to what. So I actually misspelled YouTube when I created this, so I'm going to get rid of the E just to make them an exact match. And then we're going to say YouTube Heroku deploy was the name, and hopefully that name is not taken, and sure enough, it's just fine. So now Heroku's created my app, but it hasn't. None of my code is on Heroku yet. All Heroku did is if we type Heroku or git remote -v, which lists all the remotes, or actually just git remote, we can see it's created origin, which is what GitHub created. That's the GitHub repo. And now I have another remote called Heroku. And so in order to deploy to Heroku, all I need to do is make sure that I've committed everything I need. And then when I'm ready to deploy, since I'm using this main branch now and not master as I did in the previous video, I need to say git push Heroku main, and that's going to take my current main branch and all its commits and make sure that those get pushed to the Heroku remote repository onto the main branch. And now we can see that Heroku's building, so we're just going to wait for that to run. It needs to install dependencies and build my app. Just take a couple of seconds here. All right, it's all done. We're all set, and now I can Control click, or if you're on a Mac, I believe it's Command click on this URL right here, Or alternatively, I have another Heroku command. I can say Heroku open, and that should open my browser, my default browser, to my app URL. And there we go. It's up and it's working. So quick recap again. Using Node, the Heroku tool belt, you need a GitHub account and a Heroku account if you're going to copy this. But this is just taking a look at how to first create your repo on GitHub, clone it, create a really basic Express app to get started, and then deploy on Heroku with the new default branch of main from GitHub. Thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, please hit that like button, and I will see you in the next video.